Welcome back, guys. We are going to jump into this episode with Gentry Jeevers in just 1 second. But first, I want to tell you guys a little story about a vacation that we took this past summer. It was amazing at first. Beautiful weather, beautiful beaches. We were having a blast. It was going great. But then I got really sick, like a couple days into the vacation, and we were supposed to be there for a week. And I basically spent a large part of it laid up in bed, feeling like crap, unable to do anything about it because I didn't want to go to an urgent care or emergency room or anything like that. And it would have been amazing if I had access to some basic medicines. But of course, we were on vacation. I didn't have the stuff that I would normally have at home. I was sick, and I had nothing that I could do about it except lay in bed and get pictures from my wife of her and my daughter on the beach having a blast. I tell you this story because I just linked up with the wellness company, and a lot of you have been buying their emergency medical kits that you can keep at your home that have 8 different prescription generic drugs that are great to have on hand. And they just told me that they have released 2 new types of kits. The first one is their travel emergency kit. It comes with 15 different prescription and OTC medicines and medical supplies and different things that you need to have with you when you're traveling, so you don't get caught in a situation like I was in where I basically had to miss out on the rest of the trip and feel like crap and just lay around. This is so cool because they're empowering families to take control of their health, of their medical future. They're basically saying we're fed up with the system the way it is. You can actually go ahead and get one of these kits to have on hand so you don't have to bother with the medical industrial complex. You can use my link twc.health/freemind to get 10% off any of the kits or any of their amazing products. twc.health/freemind. Go there today. Gentry, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Well, this has been a long time coming. So I have been, first off, I love your social media. You're one of my favorite social media follows on X and on Instagram. I don't know where you find a lot of the stuff you post. I know a lot of it's original too, but dude, you're always putting out stuff that like I get a good laugh or I'm like agreeing with you, but in general, everybody needs to follow your account. So who are you and what do you do? And let's jump into this thing, brother.
David, that's such a kind thing to say. I really appreciate it. So I'm Gentry. I'm from Seattle, Washington. Well, not Seattle proper, just outside. And I run a conservative page on social media. And it's really interesting because whenever people find out online that I'm from Seattle, they're like, oh my gosh, like, how is it up there? And my experience up here has been, I think, a little bit more unique than other people's. My parents homeschooled me. So I didn't get like indoctrinated by the whole school system. I'm 30 years old, so it wouldn't have been bad back then anyway. My parents decided not to homeschool me because they didn't want me to learn about evolution, right?
Right.
But I mean, now it's just kind of evolved, pun intended, to be this weird wackadoo thing where they're not even teaching people any math or English or anything like that. Oregon schools just put out something that they are lowering the standards because people are failing all the tests, which I'm like, okay, well, that's weird. Anyway, so
I saw something, I think it was Oregon, and they went on even more specifically to say, in order to pass like more people of color, etc., we're lowering our scores, our standards rather. And I'm like, man, what an insult that is to people of color. How about you just do a better job at teaching them? And they'll pass, right? It's crazy. It's like the soft bigotry of low expectations theme, that that the left has in general. But yeah,
Well, I think because we've grown up with the public school system, we just think it's normal, right? We just think that government schools are the way to go. And if you look throughout history, like public schools, government schools have been the experiment.
Mhm.
Most of the time throughout history, you've been either homeschooled or gone to school like within a church community, right?
Right,
So
right,
that like the whole idea that and there's this idea right now that homeschooling is this experiment, like, oh, are your kids going to turn out okay, blah blah blah. And there is that there is some truth to that, mostly because the people who have decided to homeschool in the past were weird, like the parents were weird. And I know a ton of these people, right? I know a ton of these people who were they were weird because their parents were weird. We didn't turn
right.
out weird because my parents are awesome. They have a thriving social life. Like my dad's got a crazy business that he runs. My mom does real estate, and like we're just normal people, right?
Yeah,
We were in sports, we were in youth groups. So like the whole idea about socialization, right? It's like, oh, your kids are going to be socially inept, and it's like, well, sort of, not really. Like I don't know, like this whole idea that it's an experiment. It's really not, and you
yeah.
get so much of a better education, in my opinion, because I went to this like 2 day a week private school, and we learned how to think, not what to think. Right? We learned the trivium, which is like knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Right? So
Mhm.
classical education, and that was just for 2 years in middle school, and I guarantee you, I guarantee you that I learned more in those 2 years than I did in high school and college. Like high school and college was a breeze after being homeschooled because I just, I knew how to think. I knew how
Right,
to think about things,
right.
and it's kind
And
of helped
that's
me like dovetail into what I'm doing now because I'm not just taking what CNN or MSNBC is saying as the truth.
right, right. And so for high school, you went to did you go to public school or private school?
Yeah, so I went to private school for 1 year, and then I went to Running Start, which basically is I went to a college, but it accounted for high school credits and college credits.
Got it.
So,
Got it.
mhm,
Yeah, the whole education conversation is it really has changed a lot in recent years, and it's been really awesome to see because you're right. It sort of has been like this foregone conclusion, I think, with most people in America that oh, you just take your kids to public school,
mhm,
and I understand that in general, right? We're all paying taxes that fund this thing,
mhm,
so yeah, that's just something we should take advantage of. But I think more and more people are realizing, and look, as far as being socially maladjusted, man, I've met so many kids that went to public school that are way more socially awkward than home
mhm,
kids. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of my friends in adulthood, people who I've met later in life, sort of post college, once I was a professional, and people that I've resonated with online, et cetera, a lot of them are homeschooled, and
mhm,
it has just turned out that way, and I think probably in no small part because they are the type of people that know how to think and weren't told what to think, and you really see that crumble with these and look, I was a public school kid, so, there's all is not lost if you went to public school, but you do have to challenge sort of your preconceived notions and I went to the most liberal university in America for grad school. I went to UC Berkeley. And yeah, dude, I tell people that and they're like, "How on earth did you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, honestly, man, it if there was any piece of my life that quote unquote radicalized me or at least forced me to examine sort of my paradigm of thought. It was going there and just seeing sometimes you have to see how nuts an ideology can be firsthand to really start to think about your position on things. And so
mhm,
I was sort of indoctrinated. I was in the sciences, and so my degree was in biochem, and I went to a PhD program at Berkeley in the same field. And so it was all my professors, are anti-religion, pro, you mentioned evolution in terms of like why you were homeschooled. I was exposed to the exact opposite for
Hmm.
all of my youth. And like, dude, I voted for Barack Obama, not because I liked any particular policy position or anything. It was just like, that's what I was told to do.
Hmm.
I was told
Hmm.
what to think. Right. And that was before I went to Berkeley, and I got there and it was just sort of like, whoa,
Hmm.
this is the natural progression of these ideas if you extrapolate them out to the extremes, right? And this was in
Hmm.
2010, and they were already far too radically left for me.
Hmm.
And that's when I was like, hold on a second. Has everything I've been told been a lie? And then, of course, it was. And I went down the path of educating myself, and thank God for that. But man, going back to my main point in all of that is like most of my adult friends are people like you who were
Hmm.
homeschooled, or and we used to think that homeschool kids were weird, just like what you said. And dude, it's far from that in my experience today. And I think what is it, like 5 million American kids are homeschooled now, so it's gone up every year. I think COVID played a big part in that.
Hmm.
Parents were able to see sort of what their teachers were telling the children when they were getting this online education, and they were like,
Hmm.
Hell no, I'm pulling them
Hmm.
out." um so yeah, it's been interesting, man. It's been really interesting to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also this idea that you have to be the teacher the entire time. And that's not the case. There's so many resources out there. I know that Turning Point has a really
Mm,
great homeschool program. So does I think PragerU has one too, to be honest. There's another organization that's launching one soon called Young Americans Against Socialism. So they have a homeschool program that they're launching, or it has launched. I got to talk to Allie, but there's so many resources out there. You don't have to be the teacher. My parents taught me until I was in like sixth grade, and then they maxed out, and then we went to, it's called co-ops, right?
right.
And so we would just do that. It's through your local church. If you Google it, there's so many resources on it. If you even want to just put on a YouTube video and have someone else teach your kids that is qualified and has your same values, then you can go do that. I mean, there's like, don't feel hopeless if you think you have to homeschool your kids, but it's not. It seems daunting. Just go to Google. There's so many resources out there,
Right.
or
Yeah.
DM me because I have it all.
Yeah, and like the Apogee program is another really cool one. I had Matt Boudreau on the show fairly recently. He teamed up with Tim Kennedy,
Mm,
and they've created this Apogee school, and they're opening, I think, something like 50 new locations, quote unquote, across the US, but really it's more of a like a homeschooling co-op type thing.
hmm. Hmm.
And it's based more so around how to think, the actual like, dude, I went to public school and I use nothing today that I learned in public school except for how to write and how to read. Otherwise, the things that would actually have been useful in my life, like how to budget, personal finances, entrepreneurship, all of those things,
Hmm.
we didn't learn any of that.
Hmm.
It was calculus and differential equations and
Hmm.
all of that. And so there are a lot of these movements aimed at more practical knowledge that
Hmm.
actually will make you a functioning human in society who's proficient with money and running a household, right?
Hmm.
And it's interesting because you start going down the rabbit hole, and I'm like, why don't schools teach that stuff? That's really
Hmm.
odd to me. And then you're like, oh wait, once the kid graduates, they want a 17-year-old to commit to god awful amounts of debt to go get a piece of paper. So of course they want them ignorant to the ramifications of debt and things like that. And so it's the whole thing is just gross in my opinion. And if I could go back, I wouldn't have gone to graduate school. It's
Hmm.
not served me in any way. And yeah, but what are you going to do?
I mean, this whole homeschool thing, this whole re-education of kids, I think is paramount to the success of the United States at large. So
I agree.
one of the trends that I'm seeing is that conservatives and Christians and people who are more towards the center, they are having more kids, which is a
Yeah.
great thing, right? Because we're not going to fall to the replacement theory as much as the left would want us to fall to it. But the other part of the coin, right? The other side of the story is that you have to educate your kids, right? Because there's so many, and I hear these stories all the time. There's so many, like even wealthy people who are paying $40,000 a year, who are major even donors to to conservative causes. They spent $40,000 a year to go have their kids be indoctrinated.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. And so it's like, what's the solution? How can we not lose this ideology that we're supposed to be passing down? Right. I don't have any kids, so it might be a little bit easier for me to say it. But when I do have kids, I'm for sure going to figure out how to homeschool them or send them to a fantastic private school so that the ideology doesn't get lost. Right. In some ways, we have to figure out how to indoctrinate our kids to our way of thinking. Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't think that word indoctrination is necessarily a bad one. It's
No,
just
I agree.
what's happening with the left.
Yeah. And just to emphasize your point, so here locally, I mean, we're a very red, I'm in South Carolina, we're a red state, even though we're like one of the bluest red states. And I have
Yep.
my issues with that. And I emphatically dislike Lindsey Graham and Nikki Haley and Nancy Mace. But, anyway, my county is a very red county, and then the town I live in, I think we've got like one liberal, right? So I'm it's a very right leaning area that I'm in, and I'm pretty actively involved in our local GOP, and I know I'm like the youngest person there, which is sad because I'm 36, right? Like we got to get some younger people in there.
Yep.
But
Yep.
part of that is because, to your point, dude, I know so many people that are involved that are far right conservative, and I don't, that's slung around in a derogatory sense. I mean it in the best way. Like they're very conservative, Christian, well-to-do people who are active in their community, and their kids like hate them. They're lefties that, and so it's exactly what you said. They sent them off to a university they paid a ton of money for, and the kid came back basically representing everything that this parent is against. And by the way, everything that made that parent successful to enable that kid to go on to this institution. And so it's such a key thing, man. Like I have 2 children, and I tell people all the time, right? Like, because there is this sort of, well, we're having more kids, so we're going to win in the long run. It's like, dude, not if your kids don't subscribe to the same way of thinking as you. So you have to continue doing your part, right?
Right. It's not a be all end all if you just have a ton of kids. I definitely want a lot of kids. I've said publicly that I want to have 7 kids, and that scares off a lot of women.
Yeah, but the right one will love it, man.
The right one will love it. Yep. We gotta find her first,
Well, if you're listening and you're a good conservative woman and early 30s, late 20s, and you want to have 7 kids with a good, strong conservative man, hit up Gentry.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that shout out.
Hey, I'm trying to help, man. I want young people with the right mindset to have as many kids as possible. I wish we had started sooner. We're going to try to have 1 or 2 more at least, but we're in our late 30s. So,
I mean, I
do their part.
I tried to start earlier. I got married when I was 22. Wow. And I know. So I got married really young and didn't last very long. We had, let's say I had a lot of issues that I brought into the to the marriage. I was in a fraternity, so I think like the first 3 months of our relationship, we were just drunk, right? And so drinking, some drugs, a whole bunch of nicotine, a whole bunch of party activities, and it wasn't the best scenario. I decided to get out of the fraternity. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm making moves in the right direction, but I didn't really fully like get over all of the immaturity that I had. And so we brought in a whole bunch of stuff into the marriage. And so that one didn't last very long. We were married for about 2 years, and then she found porn on my phone, and she was of the mindset that it was cheating, which it is. And she left me after that. So yeah, I think it lasted like a year and a half, something like that. So I mean, I tried to start early. I'm really glad I don't have any kids from that marriage. That would be a nightmare. But you know, you live and you learn. So I've gotten to marriage. So I know how to do that.
Your head's in the right place, man. Your head's in the right place. You actually touched on something that I'd love to go deeper on, and that's the porn thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think so I agree with you that it is cheating. And this is actually, so I've been with my wife for 18 years. We celebrated 18 years yesterday. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. God bless her for tolerating me at certain points during those early years. And this is to get to the point I was going to make, is that, you know, I didn't understand early on that porn was cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we went through that together. Until she expressed it to me,
mm-hmm.
That she saw it as cheating, as basically being unfaithful. You know, I had never even considered that, right, as a possibility. If you had asked me, no, I mean, it's just a means to an end. It's take care of this, whatever, dopamine hit, and then move about my day. But, you know, that all came crashing down when we actually had that conversation, because for me, it was just sort of an assumption I made incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to kind of talk about that, because I think most men, and married men included, probably don't think that porn is cheating. So what's sort of your thought process behind that? Because it sounds like you sort of had a change, you know, or you knew all along and thought it was cheating and didn't care. I'm just curious to hear kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my marriage, there was a whole bunch of other struggles. Like, we fought all the time, and it was pretty bad, and it was paired with alcohol. And so what would happen is we'd get drunk, we'd fight, and then there'd be a whole bunch of like shame. And so you would go from high to low. Mm-hmm. And then to get back up to a high, I would use porn to try to get back there. And then it would all kind of like crescendo. Mm-hmm. And then we get drunk again. And then it was this whole cycle of alcohol, fight, porn. And it was just this whole cycle. I mean, you could literally time it out. It was like every 3 months we would have this big blow up, and it was crazy, and it was terrible. I didn't think that porn was cheating. I knew it was bad, but I didn't think it was actually cheating. And the more that I've researched it, the more that I've like come to understand what it actually is and how it affects you, like the why makes so much more sense. I mean, mm-hmm. even if you look at the macro of it, right? Porn really is the marketing arm for sex trafficking. And it's the broken road of like fatherlessness households, right? So it really does change your mind. Like it creates a whole bunch of erectile dysfunction, which destroys you as a man. And it's just so freaking terrible. But yeah, the whole idea of it being cheating really has come up in relationships, because I have a long road to like understand what it actually meant and how it actually affected women, because a lot of times men will just do stuff and like, oh yeah, we're men, like we can just do it and it'll be fine. Because in a lot of ways, like if women didn't exist, it probably would be fine to a point, maybe. But
Well, if women didn't exist, we wouldn't
well, yeah,
exist.
right,
But
right. Let's not go down that tree of like
well,
all the other possibilities. But
right.
but
It would have stopped with Adam, I guess, unless God just kept creating dudes.
I mean, there always is the argument that the Nephilim would have created some sort of genetic modification, right? So, I mean, we can go down that road, but
I would love to eventually, because that's something that I haven't taken a deep dive on yet, but I've heard people bring it up, and it's intriguing.
Yeah.
So I would love to. But before we do that, though, the porn thing, and look, man, I tell young dudes all the time, because young guys reach out to me a lot, which I love, because I think young men, you mentioned fatherlessness, right? It's awful. And no matter, so I didn't have a dad around when I was growing up either. So a lot of these things I say from experience. Like I went through the pain of that. If you don't have a dad around, you're still going to look for a masculine figure to emulate. You know, oftentimes young men will look to pop culture or whatever. And so I'm glad young dudes reach out to me, and I can at least speak from my perspective of, you know, a father and a husband, and someone who's gone down that road. And I wish I'd had that when I was younger. But these young guys, I mean, and it's so early, man. It's like 11, 12 years old. They have the entire world of porn in their hand. And, you know, Jordan Peterson talks about, you know, before the advent of all of this, like most men saw a handful of women in their day-to-day existence, right? Like in your town, in your village, or in your school, at your church. But now you're exposed to thousands and thousands of scantily clad, you know, women every single day. If I open my Instagram, I don't look this stuff up, but it's still like, if I go to the search thing, they're forcing it on me constantly. And you know, I think it's because I follow a lot of fitness accounts and stuff, and that just sort of, in Instagram's eyes, segues into, oh, you must want to look at girls shaking their butts and stuff. And it's like, you're inundated with this, and it's so unhealthy for young men, because by the time they ever have their first relationship, and then in late teenage years or early adulthood, they finally are in a serious relationship and have sex, like they have so many unrealistic expectations, and they're so overstimulated already. You know, you mentioned erectile dysfunction. Well, that's because like they expect sex to be what they've seen in porn. And it's not that. In fact, it's so much more, and it's deeper, and it's beautiful, but it's, the expectation is so skewed, man. And it's so bad for you in that way. And then also it rewires your brain, like you said, to where you're just constantly seeking this quick dopamine hit, and you don't look for anything meaningful and valuable in your life. And so I'm just really, really, really big on that topic. And I think, I mean, you weigh in on this, but I think that we are starting to see the pendulum swing, though, in the other direction, with a lot of young men sort of saying, you know, whether it's the no-fap community or the anti-porn community or like the trad community, like they're like, no, I want, you know, I want to find my future wife, and I'm saving myself. And, you know, sex is sacred. It's not just like a handshake. It's something to be taken seriously. And on the other side of the coin, I think young women are starting to say, you know, this is something valuable and important, and I shouldn't just give it away to, you know, any old guy, right? Like, I love Isabella DeLuca. She's really big about talking about, you know, saving herself for marriage and all this stuff. And so we're seeing it, and I think it is happening, but man, it's really an uphill battle.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even perfect on it either. Like I've got Covenant Eyes on my phone, and I messed up the other day, and one of my buddies called me, and he's like, "Hey man, are you okay? Are
What
you
is
good?"
that? Is that like an app that?
Yeah, it tracks your internet history, and so the next day, one of my really good friends, he gets a report and he's like, "Hey, these ones are probably porn." And he called me out on it. And I was
Wow.
like, "Oh man, thanks, dude. I really appreciate it." So like, I'm not perfect on this, you guys, right?
Well, nobody is. I mean, there's only one perfect being, and he's
I
his
wish I
wife.
was.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of this like journey does have a little bit more impact when we are like forthright and outcoming about all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, because no one wants to hear from like the perfect guy, the perfect pastor, like, "Oh, you should do this, you should do this," and it's like, yeah, dude, have you ever lived?
Right.
Have you ever like done anything? Like, I don't know. Like I know of some pastors that have had some like just vanilla lives, and they made all the right decisions, and I'm like, that's awesome for you. Like, I wish I would have done that, but it's also like unrealistic because I just don't know how to relate to them, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like so like like probably like a while back I was sleeping with this girl. I was involved in church, and I was talking to my pastor about it, and he's like, "What if you just don't sleep with her?" And I was like, "Oh, come on, dude. Like that's great advice, but like come on, man."
I mean, but sometimes it is that simple.
Right.
It's like I got really lucky, man. I've had
Mhm.
one girlfriend in my entire life. She ended
Oh,
up becoming,
heck yeah.
yeah, she became my wife. That was it. And I was 18. I'm 36 now. Like I'm
Mhm.
incredibly blessed in that
Mhm.
regard. Like, and it was dumb luck. It was not in.
Mhm.
I take zero credit for that. Like literally, I had no values or morals in that
Mhm.
regard at that point in my life. I just God put her in my path, and I thank him every day for that. But
Mhm.
a big part of it was my freshman year of college. It was the first semester, and you know how college is. It's like I was going there like, "Oh, this is going to be amazing, girls." And and I had really been I had no girlfriends in high school. I was focused on school because for the situation I came up in, I saw it as my only ticket out. Like I
Mhm.
had both of my parents were drug addicts, abusive, in and out of prison.
Mhm.
I moved out of the house in 7th grade and couch
Mhm.
surfed, and like it was a
Wow.
crazy way to grow up. But anyway, for me, I was like, all right, I'm gonna be straight edge through high school, but then when I get to college, yeah.
Mhm.
And there was a little bit of that, but then I met her, and I think, oh, this beautiful girl. We're gonna hook up. This is gonna be awesome. She's like, no, 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 dude, not on the first night. Are you serious? And that for me was like, whoa, I have massive respect for this chick, and now I'm going to pursue her.
Right.
And then it just sort of one thing led to the other, and she became my wife and the mother of my children. But like,
Mhm.
there's a lot of power in that. Any young women who are listening, like the level of self-respect she had, and
Mhm.
knowing, you know, just it blew me away as a dumb young kid. And I was like, whoa, I want more of this. Like
Mhm.
this is different. This is different than
Mhm.
those other girls. So there sometimes it is that simple, but it is very, very tough. And I just got lucky. And if I hadn't gotten lucky crossing paths with her, I would have totally been, you know, awful in every way, I'm sure.
Yeah. 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 That's that's a really cool story. I
Yeah.
wish that I would have had that story, but
I don't know why it happened, and I don't know, I don't think I deserved it, but
yeah.
dude, it's awesome. And people don't believe me when I'm like, yeah, 18 years together, and they're like, how old are you? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm 36. And they're like,
Yeah.
"But that doesn't make sense. You're lying." I'm like, no, I just got super lucky.
Mhm.
So anyway, I agree with you though. It's like I had a roommate like that in college. He was Lutheran, extremely straight edge. He wouldn't drink, he didn't curse. He was with he came into school having a girlfriend. He would never go out with us. He like stayed in the dorm, did his schoolwork, and like was on the phone with his girlfriend who was at a different school. And we gave him a hard time over it. And now I look back and I'm like, dude, what a stud, you
Mhm.
know? such a stud, and he's happily married to that same girl. He's a
Hmm.
successful engineer. She's a doctor. They got kids. It's like, dude, that doing that is so much more difficult than succumbing to the hedonistic carnal desires that most people do in college and in young adulthood.
Oh, it's so much harder and so much
Dude,
harder. There's even this whole like red pill movement
yeah.
that is pushing men to go like be their animalistic self. And to be honest, like the message, like the first part of the message is kind of good. Like be a man, like go work out, go make your money. But then the next part of it's like go sleep with as many women as you can. It's like it doesn't.
Yeah, I disagree with that
It's
wholeheartedly.
it's it's really really bad. Like their prescription on how to be a man is so like misguided because it really it's like okay, be disciplined with fitness, be disciplined with your work, be disciplined with like health and wellness, but then don't be disciplined when you're
With
like
sex.
with all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like it just like it really it boggles my mind because like one of the things that I look at is when Jesus says like deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me, right? And so I feel like in all things we're supposed to deny ourselves, and that's way harder than like it's for some things it could be easier, but for other things it's just like really hard. So for example, yesterday was my 2.5 year mark of being sober. So
Congrats, man.
thank you. I
That's
appreciate
huge.
it.
I can't
But
say that. I can't say that. So there you go.
yeah, but that I feel like that decision, March 6th of 2021, was one of the best decisions I've ever made to deny myself. And I even still like even this last week, I wanted to drink.
So what brought you to making that decision ultimately?
So I had a really, really bad night, like a really bad night. I was dating this girl. We got in this huge fight. It was kind of like a toxic relationship. So I probably shouldn't have been in that scenario anyway. Like, you know, like the learning lessons. But I had a really bad night. She stopped me from driving drunk, which was really good. And I woke up in the morning and drove home and decided that I was going to stop drinking for a month. And then that turned into 2 months, and that turned into 6 months. And then it just kind of became my thing, which is amazing because back in college, I was a college athlete, I was a swimmer, and then I was in a fraternity. So like just drinking was part of the lifestyle. Like I would wake up at like 5 a.m. still hungover, go and puke in the gutters, and you know go swim 5 miles. Like that. Like we were just like we were intense. And then when I transferred schools and got into the fraternity, it just magnified it. Right. There's even a little interesting lesson there from being a college athlete, having that being your full identity, and then stopping that and not knowing who you are or what you're about. So I put all of my competitive energy into drinking. And so I got really, really, really good at that. And I mean, there's some fun stories there, but you know, stories that I regret, but they're still fun to tell. But so it was like I just drank. Like that was one of my talents, so to speak. That was one of my things. And when I decided to stop drinking, my parents and my family and my community, they're like, okay, like let's see how long this lasts. Let's just see. Let's just see. And now I'm at it for 2.5 years, and I don't want to go back. I still feel the urge to go back and drink, but one of the things that has really helped me is my brother at about the 6-month mark, because I was kind of talking to him about this, and he's a super, super disciplined guy, really introspective, big reader. He's my younger brother, and he's married, and he's crushing life. But he told me to write out a pros and cons list of drinking. And so I did that. And what I got to on the pros list is that it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And on the cons list, there was a whole host of things, right? Hangovers was like one of the smallest ones, right? Because in 2018, I got a DUI. So I was like, okay, well, probably shouldn't drink anymore. And then just a whole host of mistakes and embarrassments, and I didn't want to be that guy. And when I put it on paper, it really became real to me, right? There's a saying that, only 3% of people write their goals on paper, and then they'll get achieved. I think that also works for in this scenario, where it just became really real to me, like what I was doing. Because when I didn't necessarily have, I wouldn't be categorized as an alcoholic. Like I had to have a drink every single day and I had to get drunk every single day. Like I would go stretches without drinking. But when I did start drinking, holy cow, I would drink. Like it wasn't, there was no moderation. There's no moderation in the interim. It was either completely sober or blacked out.
Is that an attribute of your personality in general? Because a lot of times with athletes and high performers, there's another side to that coin, right? And that's that same sort of approach that made you successful in athletics can carry over into other things like drinking and stuff like that. And I've experienced that a lot in my life. I'm very much a 0 or 100 type of person. And I have to always be cognizant of that because, dude, moderation was like not in my lexicon for most of my life. And it was great with school. It was great when I was building my company. It's great in a lot of things, but it can be really bad.
Right.
Like that's part of the reason, like I never messed with drugs, except for marijuana and mushrooms, but like hard drugs, I had a lot of friends who did them. And one, my parents were both drug addicts. And so that really left an impression on me. But two, it's like, I don't think so, man, because I think I'll like it. And that would be it. Right. Like I can't moderate myself. So is that kind of how you are too with stuff that, that you find in life, or was it just drinking?
No, 100%. Whenever I find something I'm interested in, I'm like a rat on a Cheeto. I just go after it.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like I'm full in 100%. And that's kind of where like social media has been.
I was about to say, dude, you're like, you're all in on it. And that's why I enjoy following your stuff so much though. So it works with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's social media has actually been a really interesting journey, because in college, so here's a really funny story for you. Talk about fitness. So in college, I was broke. Okay. So this is kind of a segue, but this is a funny story. So in college, I was broke. So I had to choose between beer or breakfast. And so I chose beer because that was the lifestyle that I was in. Right. So I'm at the gym with one of my guys, and he's like, "Oh, dude, there's this new thing called intermittent fasting. And basically it's so good for you. And how you do it is you just skip breakfast." And I was like, "Dude, I do that." So I was like intermittent fasting back in like 2013, 2014, before it was cool, because I made a choice between beer or breakfast. Anyway, so I was broke. And so I started to build and sell Instagram accounts. Right. So I figured out a way back in the day to do the follow, unfollow method. And I figured out like the target people to follow, which was the people who would like one of those big posts, like in the first like minute or so. So I'd go follow all those people and then unfollow them. And so I had pages that were like 100,000 followers back then. Hindsight, I should have kept them. But I learned that I was decent at social media. And then I saw Vine. And I saw all these guys on Vine have unbelievable talents and get like crazy deals, move to LA, live the life, right? And so I decided that I wanted to get more into that world. So I went from like doing social media marketing for small businesses to then being a brand manager for influencers. And we had some really successful projects there. I didn't know how to do contracts, so I got really screwed out of a couple of them. And then 2020 hit, and I had just watched like 100 hours of these conspiracy documentaries, because what else were we supposed to do? Right? No, I'm not kidding. It was like I saw video on Thursday, and I'm not kidding. Like every single second of my time was looking up a new conspiracy. And I was like, because I'd always been conservative and Christian, right? Didn't always live a Christian life, but I've always been conservative, right? But this like awakening happened in, I think it was July of 2020, where I knew that Bush did 9/11. I knew like the JFK stuff was weird, but I didn't really know how deep it went. And so my first video that blew up, I was originally on TikTok. The first video that blew up was, I'm a Trump supporter in Seattle. How's that going to go for me, or who's with me, or something like that. And that video just ended up exploding. The interesting thing, just to backtrack, is that a couple of years before, I had been flown out to do a screen test for The Bachelorette. So I was like trying to go like down that road and do all that stuff. And so like this was like a whole 180 from that kind of content. But that video blew up. First it hit like the liberal the liberal algorithm, and then it hit the conservative one. And then I got a whole bunch of followers, and then I got a whole bunch of calls and saying, hey, you're one of the only ones doing this. Like, can you come be a speaker at the Republican thing? And then that kind of dovetailed into like a whole bunch of really cool opportunities. But sorry, I'm going a little bit long, but one of the weird things is I didn't really know what I believed. And so when I first put it out there, I was like, oh, I gotta get really good at this. Like, I gotta know the conservative talking points. I gotta know the theology behind this. And so the last like 4 years has been a deep dive into political science and theology and this whole 9 yards. So kind of to go back to your point, like when I go do something, it's 100%.
Yeah. Wow. So I don't think I follow you on TikTok. Are you still on TikTok?
So I've been deleted at 50K and at 80K and at 120K. So I'm like 250,000 followers down across all platforms. Like this is it
happens.
Yep.
Dude, I've had to get my Instagram account recovered so many times. Like the most benign stuff too. It's just in the heat of COVID and everything else, like you could get banned for the dumbest things.
Yeah.
And I didn't do TikTok for a long time. I just like recently started on there. I think I'm over 20,000, which it's pretty crazy how quick you can grow on that platform, but I'm sure I'll get banned pretty soon. All I have to do is, say, I don't know, I believe in God, and they'll ban me. But it's wild because so for me on social media, I was doing mostly fitness related stuff because I've always been passionate about that. But in 2020, July as well, actually, I put out a piece of content thinking that I was being helpful, saying, hey, look, here's the underlying science for why these masks don't mitigate the spread of airborne viruses. And I did it in the context of the gym environment because I was putting up fitness content. People were like, why aren't you wearing a mask? You're going to kill everybody. And I was like, actually, my background is in this stuff. I went to grad school for this. Here's some papers, and here's the reason why. It's actually increasing the spread in the gym environment because it's basically a sponge for, virus. You're touching it, you're touching equipment, whatever.
Right.
I put that out thinking I was helping people. As you can imagine, that was not the reception I received. And people, I was coaching people at the time. I lost clients. People blocked me. I had family members who like unfollowed me and stuff. And I was like, holy crap. That's when I realized this transcends just sort of a congenial disagreement. This is, as it's been called now, a mind virus. Like these people are out there, like they're treating this like a religion and like a cult, so to speak. And so then I put up a piece of content that was just a picture of me holding a sign up saying we can disagree and still be friends. And that was targeted at like the people who had basically blocked me, unfriended me, fired me as their coach. And I was like, hey man, like we can things, like, be part of one another's lives. And that went super viral. Like I just put it up on Facebook hoping that some of my clients would see it. And next thing I know, like I go to bed, I wake up and it's been shared like 100,000 times. And then,
Whoa.
yeah. And like millions of likes. And I'm like, whoa, I've struck a chord. Like people,
Mhm.
this resonates with people. And so for a period of time, I was just making these posts holding up a sign. And then, lots of people ended up doing posts like that as well.
Mhm.
But that really woke me up to sort of what we were dealing with. And that's when I started the podcast in January 2021. And kind of the rest is history, man. But like I was never trying to be a social media influencer or anything like that. But
Yeah.
I just kind of found myself in this whirlwind of like controversy over something that I thought was just, hey, these masks don't work. Here's the reasons from a scientist. Like I've published papers on this stuff. I know I don't look like it, but I actually used to do this. And,
Mhm.
I'm trying to help you guys out. And they were like, screw you, you right wing conspiracy theorists, trust the science. And I'm like, I'm telling you the science. Like, this is what I studied. And
Yeah.
it was just like, okay, I've got to keep speaking up about this stuff because this is bad, man. This is real bad.
Seriously.
And so that's what kind of landed me in the position I'm in now. And I even put on my my thing, like, not an influencer. Like I'm not trying to be that. I'm just putting stuff out. If it resonates with you, great. If it
Mhm.
doesn't, you can tell me I'm the worst person in the world. I don't care.
Right.
But
Right.
that's why I appreciate people like you, because you're willing to be outspoken and you're willing to say the thing that I think a lot of people are thinking but are afraid to say.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I used to do that a lot more, right? Because I would make videos of myself, but now it's kind of morphed into like following the cutting edge news, right?
Mhm.
And so what I post most of the time on Instagram is breaking within the last 10 minutes. And so I've kind of morphed in from being like an influencer to just running a news page,
Yeah.
which I kind of like in a lot of ways. But that's also why I like doing these podcasts, because I get to talk about stuff that I actually want to talk about, because I
Yeah.
love talking about church and theology and fishing and fitness and like how to become like a better person, because like my whole audience, they're just like programmed or geared or expecting to want like the latest cutting edge piece of news, and it's pretty controversial, and a lot of times um, there's not even a real like hard take on what's happening. So for example, last night Matt Gaetz put out a tweet about Kevin McCarthy being the RNC chair, and I posted it, and I was like, "What do you guys think about this?" And I think that people think that when I post something, it's like an endorsement, and people got really mad at me for like posting that. And I was like, "Hey guys, like," and I even replied to one of the comments, like, I was like, "I am here to share the news to keep you informed. I post stuff that I think people need to see." Um, I was also on a space with Matt Gaetz and Nick Sotor, which, by the way, if you
Mhm.
don't follow Nick on X, he is like him and Mario Nafal
Mhm.
host some of the greatest spaces of all time.
They
Like
they do. Yeah.
on this space last night, there was Matt Gaetz, Sebastian Gorka, Carrie Lake, Tyler Boyer, Caroline Wren. Um, who's the guy that just got ousted from Congress to it was a whole bunch of like amazing people on this space talking about who should be the next RNC chair, who should be the next VP pick, and how to win in these states that seemingly don't have a way to win. Anyway, I was listening to Matt Gaetz on this, and he was like, Kevin McCarthy is actually one of the greatest fundraisers that we've ever seen in the Republican Party. He wouldn't have to negotiate any policy. His whole job would just be to fundraise. And he's like, one of the things that we want to do is strip down the RNC to just be like a river for the conservative causes. So instead of being a
Mhm.
reservoir and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on flowers and limos and all this other BS stuff that they're doing, why don't we just have it be a place where we can deploy money in the right way? So kind of like what a George Soros does with his open Open Society Foundation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So use the RNC like that, raise a whole bunch of money from the billionaire class, and then go deploy it at places like Turning Point Action and PragerU and all these other bigger organizations that are doing a lot better in communications and marketing for the conservative cause. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. How can I communicate that to my following in a way that, because I've been a little bit critical of McCarthy as actually been very, very critical of him
when he was
as
speaker.
When he was speaker of the House. I don't think Mike Johnson's doing a much better job. I think he's actually might be doing a worse job because he's not fundraising. And there's a whole conversation there, right? But it's interesting because, like, how would I communicate that to my audience without them just ripping me a new one and unfollowing?
Yeah. It is. It's crazy because, I mean, even being on the right and have, the bulk of my following is people who lean right, just because they that's who tends to follow me. Because, if you're into fitness, you're a far right extremist today, according to the lefty news. But
love that.
It's crazy how it's crazy how emotional they can be over things. Like I'll put up something, that's Vivek making a good point about something, and they're like, oh yeah, I don't trust him. He's he's a plant and this and that, and he's in bed with the Soroses and all this stuff. And I'm like, bro, I'm just putting this up because he just, roasted Ronna McDaniel. Like, can you not appreciate it for what it is? Which, by the way, he should be RNC chair. That would be like beautiful justice, just because, how much she hated him. But anyway, he probably wouldn't be great at it. But it's crazy just how, like, and then when DeSantis was still in the primary race, you had your MAGA defectors who were on the DeSantis side, and now they're arguing with the Trump people, and I'm like, bro, we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
Can we stop quarreling over this? When it's like arguing with your spouse over what you're having for dinner while there's like an army moving in on your house to blow it up. It's like, we got bigger problems, man. Can we please stop the infighting? But it's nuts just how vicious they are with this stuff. And it's like, wait, I thought we called out the left for being this way, and now you guys are being this way over, you're being the same as them.
Right. Well, I don't even think the left infights as much as we do.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
They're really good at getting centralized around one person. And I think it's because of the hive mind, right?
Yeah, they don't know how to think. They're told what to think, and that's what they think.
But I think that we could probably take a note from them, because every organization has people rallying around a singular person, whether that's good or bad, right? If you're, I mean, you've owned companies before, right? Like, you're the guy. You're making all the moves in all the directions, and people have to centralize around your vision, right? It's not necessarily you making the shots, right? Because the salespeople have to sell, the people have to deliver. I hope you don't have a big HR department, but
this many.
Good.
This many. And you know what's funny about that? My wife is actually in HR. That was her whole career. And so, you can imagine the dinner time conversations about that, because I'm hugely anti-HR. But that just shows you right there. You can be in a relationship with someone who, you got your little differences, right?
Yeah.
But you're totally right, man. And it sucks when you see, like, right now you have Nikki Haley, who, gosh, man, I hate that she's from South Carolina, because I want to be associated with her in no way.
Yeah.
But dude, the crap that she's posting about, it's like, why? Like, you're going to go nowhere quick, right? Unless, so what, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, actually, because when you see how enthusiastically she's still, like, she'll lose and then give a victory speech, right? It's like, does she know something that we don't know? Like, what is she thinking is going to happen? You know?
So politics is a really weird game where you have to show strength 100% of the time, especially when you're running, especially in a primary. If you show any sort of weakness, your supporters may love you, but they're like, we don't think you're going to win, so we're going to throw in for the other guy, right? So there has to be this like almost delusional sense of we're going to win no matter what. We're going to pull out a surprise. I mean, Vivek did a really good job of that, right? He was like gung ho and all this kind of stuff. And so, I mean, to be honest, it's the same playbook, which people are going to say, no, guys, the playbook, let me just make this crystal clear. The playbook is there. And a lot of times the playbook, like a winning playbook, works. It doesn't matter what team is running it, right? It does matter the players, but it doesn't necessarily matter what team is running it. Like if Bill Belichick goes and gets another job at a different team, he's got a really good playbook, right? And he's got to put the right players in, and then he can have a winning record like the Patriots did, right? It's so the playbook is there. Nikki Haley is, for all intents and purposes, like if you take out her donors and her policies, right? She's running a good campaign. She is. Now her policies are terrible. We don't like her. We don't like that she has a whole bunch of Democratic supporters and donors. Reid Hoffman, right? He's from the Seattle area. He founded
LinkedIn, right?
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Went to Epstein Island. Big donor to liberals and the Democratic Party. I mean, the guy's just nutso. But I always have to find like the good in every scenario. And I'm watching her campaign and she's not going to win. In fact, she just lost the pointless primary in Nevada. I don't know if you saw that.
Right. I saw that. Yeah. To like none of these candidates.
Yeah. To none of these candidates. By the way, that primary does not count. It's the caucus that counts in Nevada. So if anybody watching in Nevada or you know somebody in Nevada, tell them to go out and caucus and cast their vote for Donald Trump. Because, I mean, what other choice do we have?
It'll be interesting to see what Nikki does when she drops out in terms of supporting Trump or, you know, because she really has kind of burned a lot of bridges. Like one of my favorite things to do is to go on any of her recent posts and look at the comments because bro, they are roasting her. Did you see, it was like a couple of days ago, she made this post about all the support she's getting. And there was a picture of a letter, a handwritten letter, and then a screenshot of an email from a quote supporter. Did you see this post?
Yeah.
And it was an email, like the send button was still enabled. And there was like no subject line. She clearly had someone type it up and then like screenshot it. It's like, that's not what an email looks like when you receive it, Nikki. We're not idiots.
Right.
It is like, it's entertaining to watch, but it'll be interesting to see what happened. Like, so I know Ralph Norman, he's one of our representatives here in South Carolina. And I was texting with him about coming on the show, and then he started supporting Nikki, and I've kind of stopped texting because I'm like, I should have him on still, Ralph, if you're listening. You know, I know you're a good guy and Nikki's your friend and you got to support her, but it's like all these people, she's going to drop out. She's not going to win. Like, it'll be interesting to see what they start saying. And if they rally, I mean, I would hope they'll rally behind Trump. And I know that they're kind of playing the game to an extent, but man, I despise politics as much as I talk about it. Like I don't know, man. It's gross in a lot of ways.
You know, in 2020, I saw this really viral post and it said something like, we can still be friends and disagree.
Exactly. Well, look, I'll still be Ralph's friend.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can still question sort of the mindset and you know, I can be critical of Nikki and Ralph and everyone and still be their friend. You know, if Nikki showed up at my house and wanted to have coffee and chat, I'd let her in. You know, I'd have a lot of questions for her about Boeing and about a lot of things, but you know, sure. people often conflate, like, I'm sure you and I disagree on things. Like,
Mhm.
you're not going to find any single human that you agree with on everything. I don't agree with my spouse on everything.
Mhm.
And like, people conflate that with like hatred or
Mhm.
not being able to be congenial or be friends or whatever. And it's like, bro, I've got liberal friends, I've got lefty friends.
Mhm.
I disagree with them on a lot of things, and I tell
Mhm.
them that, and they tell me, what they don't like about what I'm saying. That doesn't mean they're not my friend,
Mhm.
and I think we've really gotten away from that, and that's why I made that post. But yeah, I can still talk shit about them. That's fine. I can still talk shit about them all day long, and they can talk shit about me, and I won't take it personal or hold it against them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a really powerful Bible verse from in Psalms. I think it's Psalms 92, but it says, "Where there's unity, God commands a blessing."
Mm,
Right, and
mhm.
the I mean the left has appropriated the word unity to really mean like uniformity, right?
Yes,
And so
yeah,
I think like the modern day word would be harmony, right? Because we're not all going to agree on everything. I mean, there's you're if you find someone that agrees on everything, like just wait because they're going to disagree with you on something in the future.
or they're
But
lying.
right, but the infighting between parties, between family, between churches, between people, like it doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense. Now, like I'm not saying to uh, be soft on your beliefs and your approach, but I'm just saying like you can agree to disagree. Like
Mhm.
let's figure out how to get back to that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%, man.
And I
So
know that I'm not even like really good at that because I post stuff that's like, you have to believe this.
but then people reply and comment, probably
Mhm,
disagreeing and everything, and
mhm,
I still think it's good to generate a dialogue. I
mhm,
had I've had Maj Toure on my show a couple times. He's a black dude. He's very pro 2A. He goes around basically to these inner city communities and educates them on the Second Amendment and
mhm,
why gun control is essentially, it's rooted in racism, is sort of his narrative, because
hmm,
originally um, a lot of the efforts at gun control were targeted at not giving Black Americans the right to bear arms. And so
mhm,
that's his mission, and he's very outspoken about it. And, we agree on a lot of things. I would say he's a right leaning libertarian,
mhm.
but, and I was just talking to him earlier. He's going to come on again soon, but I put up a clip of our last interview on my TikTok, and it was, basically me saying it's weird that for whatever reason, there's a negative connotation with me, for example, saying I'm proud to be white. And I was talking to a black guy about this. I
Yeah.
was like, but if you say you're proud to be black, it's praised and applauded. And
Mhm.
my wife is not white. My wife is brown. And if she's like, I'm, brown power, I'm proud, I'm a proud, brown person, like people,
Yeah.
the left especially is like, yeah, yeah, go, go, go. But if you do the exact same thing as a white person, it's completely rejected, and you're castigated for it, and you're accused of being a white supremacist, etc. And I'm
Mhm.
like, it's just a weird dynamic. And I just put up a clip of talking about that, and I'm like, I don't really care to walk around saying I'm proud to be white, but it is an interesting observation that
Mhm.
societally it's frowned upon if I say that, but not if people of color say that. And so I just like bringing up these hot button issues that if you just approach logically and objectively, it's like, that's weird. Why is that? So
Mhm.
I put that clip out, and I know there's going to be all kinds of like, bullshit on there,
Yeah.
but I think stuff like that, even though like I know it's going to be controversial, I think it's important to have those conversations. So I
Mhm.
like I like the fact that you do that.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, it's really funny. I put out a post. It's just like a screenshot of this meme, and it says like, "I love being white," and I posted
Oh,
that. I
oh,
think
I
on
saw that. I saw that.
I
Yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
I think I posted that on the 1st or the 2nd of this month, which is Black History Month, and I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it after I posted it, and the left seems to think that if you say that, that means that you're diminishing all other races, right?
Right.
So but they're trying to prop up certain communities like the black community, all this kind of stuff, saying, oh, like we're like black supremacy, blah blah blah. I don't take that route. Like I'm not like I just value people for who they are because they're all made in God's image.
Exactly.
But I think that it's really retarded that people take something that they didn't ask for, that they had no choice over, and they are either ashamed of it, like a lot of white people are because of all the rhetoric, or they're just like proud of it and they think that it makes them better than other people. Right.
Yeah.
Because like I didn't ask to be male, tall, athletic. And I know that sounds like I'm like hyping myself up, but I didn't ask for it. Like I didn't. Like I just am. I just am that.
Heavy as the crown.
That does not take away from anybody else.
Yeah.
Ever.
100%, man. And I agree with you completely. And I think that the interesting thing with that, like the example of the clip that I put out with Maj, is a lot of people will have a knee-jerk reaction to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And comment out of emotion. However, and this is why I love podcasts and long form conversations, if we sat down and actually talked about it logically, we probably agree, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, yeah, when you put it that way, I guess there's nothing wrong with it, but it just, I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way. And it's like, well, okay, let's figure out why it rubs you the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Is it maybe because you've been indoctrinated to think of me as a colonizer, even though, I was born in a trailer park to two drug addict losers and had to, fight for everything I have. But I'm somehow oppressive just because I was born to look like this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to look like big hairy caveman, but that's what God gave me, right? So a lot of these things, man, most of them, and I've really tried in the 3 years I've been doing this show to get lefties on the show, and they never will. Like I've had some people say they would, and then they back out at the last minute or whatever. And for anyone listening, if you are on the left, you are welcome to come on this show and have a conversation with me, because I'm not trying to make an echo chamber. I believe what I believe, and I'll defend my beliefs, but you are welcome to come on here and tell me what you believe and defend your beliefs. And it's just, most of these things, when you sit down human to human, and you probably notice this, man, when you're out in the real world versus social media, most people get along. Like most people, it's like going back to what you said, we're all, if you believe what we believe, we're all created by God. We're all equal in his eyes, and we're human, period. That's the thing that really matters. But I still like to poke the hornet's nest, but it generates conversation. I think it's important, man, to really examine your beliefs and your preconceived notions. So, you hear proud to be white, and immediately you think one thing. You hear proud to be black, and you think something different. Well, why is that? Because it's essentially the same statement.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think it's probably good to be bold like that, but also to qualify what you're saying, because there actually are racists out there. There are
100%.
White supremacists. Like I hosted a space the other day with two friends, Evan Kilgore and Lily Kate, and we were talking about like illegal immigration and assimilation, all this kind of stuff. And we had this guy come on the space. It was wild. So he was talking about like, every single American needs to be white, and you got to put them through a CRISPR and make them white and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, what the frick are you talking about? Yeah. And then he went on to say some like nice things about Hitler. And I was like, dude, we got to kick you off. Like, this is really weird. Yeah. Like, I don't like that thought process.
Well, I hear, dude, all the time, like guys like that,
Yeah.
think that I'm like one of them or whatever, and they'll
Right.
they like saying stuff like that, and I'm like, dude, I'm not the one. Like,
Yeah.
this is not my beliefs at all. And it's funny because I'm in a mixed race marriage, right? And uh I've been accused of being a white supremacist ever since I started speaking up on social media.
Ever
And
since you grew the beard.
right, like, oh wait, you're a guy who lifts and you're white and you have a beard and you have tattoos, like white supremacist.
Right.
But the funny part about that is, like, clearly my wife isn't white. My
Mhm.
children are mixed, right?
Mhm.
Technically,
Mhm.
but especially according to, the hardcore white supremacists. And so what I tell people is like, dude, if I'm a white supremacist, I really suck at it because I'm race mixing and doing all these things that I thought white supremacists weren't supposed to do. But
Yeah.
then this is the crazy part, man. And I've talked about this on the show before. From the left, they'll
Mhm.
say, "Oh, actually, the fact that you're married to a brown person makes you more of a white supremacist because you're trying to exert your white power over her." And I'm like, dude, really? Really? Come visit our house and see who, like when the trash needs to go out and this needs to like, see who has the power in the house, right? Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
You know,
That
it's
th
wild, dude.
that line belongs in like a comedy sketch, not in academia.
Well, okay, if Babylon B had posted it and it wasn't real, it would be hilarious, but
Right.
it's actually real.
Right.
So, man, it's wild because with that, it's like I'm catching it from the extreme, quote, far right people
Yeah.
who truly are like, white is right, blah blah blah. And then
Mhm.
I'm catching it from the left who are like, you're oppressing a woman of color. I'm like, dude, give me a break. Really? This is the mental gymnastics we're gonna go through, right? Like, or I just love this woman and she's my soulmate and I don't care
Mhm.
what color she is,
Mhm.
and that's that.
Mhm.
Can't that be maybe what it is?
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, end rant.
End of rant. Well, the left though really likes diversity of color,
Mhm.
not diversity of thought. And
100%.
and a perfect example of that is Seattle, where I'm from. So I don't live in Seattle proper. I live just outside, but if you go to any tech company, you're going to see a whole bunch of different people working there. You're going to see whites, Asian, Latinos, Indians, like just everybody. It's kind of cool.
Blacks. You gotta say blacks too.
You got
Be
to say
inclusive.
blacks too. Um, actually, one of my old managers, he's a black guy. He just got this director of like global sales at some really cool company. And I'm just like, oh, that's awesome. Like
Solid.
he's a
Yeah.
stud, by the way. It doesn't matter his skin color. I mean, he can do. If you put him in a role, he's going to crush it. But there's no diversity of thought
Right. Right.
at all. Like, and if there is diversity of thought, like people who think like us, they got to be quiet. I've heard stories of people at Microsoft on a Teams meeting say, and they were running the meeting. They say, "Hey guys," and they got a whole bunch of little private messages saying, "Hey, you can't do that because you're misgendering everybody and the DEI and all this kind of stuff." And people at these like crazy companies who are like married to DEI have to be really, really careful. Otherwise, they're going to lose their really, honestly, cushy jobs that they have, and they're going to. It's wild.
I know a lot of, so my corporate background before I was started my company and all of that stuff was in recruiting. I did
Hmm.
that for close to a decade and primarily for science and engineering type of roles. And so
Hmm.
I still have a lot of friends from that life.
Hmm.
Dude, I would say the majority of them, because most of my friends from that world are sales or recruiting. So they're
Hmm.
driven by money, right? It's a
Hmm.
commission-based job. They're go-getters. They're type A. Most of them lean right. They're capitalists.
Mm-hmm.
And I have conversations with these people because I'll see their LinkedIn and they got their pronouns in their bio and they got this and that. And they're like, man, I just got to do that shit because otherwise, like, you know, I could lose my job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. Like exactly what you said, man. They're just like, they've got to toe the line or else. Right. And the DEI thing, which by the way, I love that Elon is so outspoken against it now because that's huge. And I've said it forever. Like when I went into my recruiting job, it was like, you know, we were trained, this was 2012. So before things really got crazy, we were trained on like, we don't discriminate based on skin color or gender when it comes to hiring. It's only merit, skills, right? And now it's like companies have racial quotas, they have gender quotas. And it's like, I was always like, dude, this is hiring based on immutable characteristics, not skills. This is completely against what we're supposed to do here. And you know, so I've always been very anti-DEI because it's, you can flower up the language all you want, but really what you're saying is we need to hire a certain amount of people based on race and, you know, another amount of people based on whatever sexual proclivity. And it's like, I had a conversation when I owned my company. It just so happened that 75% of my management team was female. And I think like half of them happened to be women of color. Right. Okay, great. Somebody was basically, it was another business owner I was talking to, and they were like, you know, good for you for prioritizing diversity. And I was like, dude, I didn't. And they're like, what? And that's a really weird aspect of this too. It's like they can't comprehend that I didn't prioritize diversity. I just hired the best people and they happen to be women and they happen to be Black or Hispanic or whatever. But in their mind, they see a woman of color in a role, a leadership role, and they automatically think, oh, they got that because the person hiring them prioritizes racial diversity or gender diversity or whatever. In my opinion, that is far more bigoted because all I did was say, hey, you're the most qualified. You got the freaking job. And it just so happened that they were female and Black or whatever it happened to be. Like, it's the same thing with voter ID, right? Like they make all these assumptions about groups, right? And they don't even realize they're the racist, bigoted ones. Oh, meanwhile, we're just like, hey, we're all people, you know, the best person should get the job. If they happen to be female, great. If they happen to be male, great. If they happen to be white, awesome. If they happen to be Black, awesome. But they're the ones who are just like hyper focused in assuming that if you hired a Black woman, it's because you make diversity a priority in your company. It's like, no, I make skill a priority. And she was the most skilled bitch, you know?
I mean, it sounds like you're strategically doing this because Biden put out a post the other day and he said that, you know, you can pay women 84 cents on the dollar. So it sounds like you're just making a business decision.
Dude, that's another thing that drives me crazy because it's not true. If you normalize for experience, if you normalize for all sorts of different factors, men and women are paid the same. In fact, in a lot of fields, women are paid more when you normalize, and that's just a fact. That's objective data. But throw that aside. If it were the case that you could pay women less for the same job with the same experience, any savvy entrepreneur would hire nothing but women.
Because you save 16%.
Exactly. Right? Like, and that's not happening. So that should be a clue right there. It's just crazy, man. It really is frustrating because sometimes I'm like, am I awake right now? Is this a dream? Are these people really saying this and they believe it? And what you find out, Gentry, is a lot of them don't believe it. They're saying it because that's what they're told to say, and they're living in fear, just like my friends who have their pronouns in their LinkedIn bio. They don't believe that shit. They're just putting it in there because they're supposed to, and they want to keep their job. Same reason people got the jab to keep their jobs, man. It's
and then they have to justify it with their virtue signal and they don't want to look stupid because no one wants to look stupid. Why would you look stupid? Why would you like admit that you got bent over by the government?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's frustrating. I mean, look, I can understand
Hmm.
at the end of the day, people need to make money. And so it's a tough sort of position to be in. And I'm
Hmm.
fortunate that I can say whatever I want and I'm beholden to nobody,
Hmm.
except for my wife and God.
Hmm.
And, they both happen to be okay with what I'm saying as far as I can tell. So, you know, but I get it. I do understand and I feel for the people who feel
Hmm.
like their back is up against the wall and they
Hmm.
can't, say what they truly believe.
Hmm.
But yeah, man. All right. I do want to talk about this. I know we've already been going almost an hour and a half. I don't know if you have a hard stop, so you can tell me at any time. Um, what do you think this year is going to look like with it being an election year? Trump, Biden, some other candidate, Gavin Newsom coming in and Biden stepping down, Michelle Obama. I've heard all kinds of craziness. What's your current position on how things are going to look this year?
I think about this a lot. And what I always come down to is we should be prepared for anything,
Hmm.
right? I think though, one of the biggest lessons that we've learned this year is on the border crisis. Okay. And just to take you through the story, um, Greg Abbott, Governor Greg Abbott went to secure the border to put up razor wire at Eagle Pass. And he's effectively changed the illegal immigration from 10,000 a day to just 1,000 a day from some of the reports that I've seen. So the Supreme Court came out with a ruling that said that the Biden administration can take down the razor wire. It didn't say that they have to, but it said that they can take down the razor wire, right? So the Biden admin said, hey, we're going to come take down the razor wire. And Governor Greg Abbott finally found his backbone. He still has his balls. He's got big old stones now.
Doesn't have
And
his legs, but he's got his balls. Sorry, I had to. I'm ableist, whatever.
He didn't stand up to Biden, but he did stand up to Biden.
He
And
wheeled up to him.
he said, sorry, like we're going to cite the Constitution, we're going to cite the Fourth Amendment and the 10th Amendment. And guess what happened?
States' rights, right? I mean, it's pretty clear.
Well, guess what happened? Nothing has happened yet.
So,
Because the government decided that they didn't have to take down the razor wire because they didn't want a big conflict.
yeah.
And so
Abbott had the support of like all the other red states as well, right? Or a lot of them.
Correct. So what happened was Greg Abbott finally went out on a limb and said, no, we're going to protect our state. There was like some back and forth. There was a whole bunch of talk about civil war. I really thought that Biden was going to come in and make a scene. He didn't do that. He did not do that. And so I think the biggest lesson is that if we stand up to this power that we perceive in the White House or whatever, that we can actually make some inroads.
How much of it do you think, though, is because it's an election year, right? Like, I think that's probably a large part of it. He doesn't want to. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that factors into the decision a lot because the border crisis is a huge priority for a lot of Americans, even if they're more moderate, right? Like, it's become so crazy that my lifelong like blue dog Democrat friends who are older, like they're like, this is nuts. We've got to do something about the border. I think Biden was afraid of alienating what small part of of a voter base he may have who are concerned over that issue.
Yeah.
But what's crazy to me is how the hell the Supreme Court could decide that the federal government has the right to do that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother theory on that. There's some like crazy conspiracy theorists that the Supreme Court was like begging Biden to go cut the razor wire so they could say that he's not protecting the U.S., right? There's other people who said that they're compromised. So it could be both sides of the coin. I don't think that's necessarily like the biggest point that I'm trying to make, though, is that when we stand up and someone goes first, right?
No, I agree. Yeah.
There's so much power in speaking the truth to power. And there's also a ton of power in getting 25 other governors on your side.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that was probably to be honest, I thought there was going to be a civil war. I really did.
It was looking that way there for a few days.
Yeah. And I thought that people were going to get deployed to the southern border. It was going to defect. Like Russia even thought that too. I don't know if you saw the article about Russia saying, hey, like Texas will help you. And then the UN got involved. I don't know if you saw that one where they were going to come in from like to help the Biden admin on this whole thing. So it got really heated really, really quickly. And Biden didn't do anything. He stood down. And so I think that should be a lesson for 2024 that we have to make a stand, and a pretty dramatic one too.
Yeah.
A really dramatic one. And it does have to, like, you do have to understand the laws. Right. And so I think that there's something that everybody in every state should go look at. And it's there's always laws in all the books that say that that teachers have to teach about America. Right. In fact, in Washington State, it's loosely stated, but you can argue it. And because they're not teaching what it means to be an American and what it means to be patriotic, like you can go to the school board and show that law and speak truth to power and make them back down.
Yeah. A big part of it is just, like you said earlier, growing balls or growing a spine and calling the federal government, calling their bluff, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what Abbott did. He was like, all right, cool. We're gonna hold fast to this. Your move, right? And like you said, he did nothing. And I mean, we saw this as well with the vaccine mandates. People, a lot of states stood up to it, and ultimately the federal government was shot down. And so I think that there is a positive message in that. Like you said, we just have to sack up and speak up. And and the at the end of the day, I mean, this country has a particular framework that makes it great, right? And it's in large part that we can speak up against the federal government, and the federal government's role is very defined and limited. Now, they constantly, I've used this analogy before, but it's one of my favorite analogies because I'm a big fan of the original Jurassic Park movie. But there's a scene in there where he's talking about how smart the velociraptors are, and they test the electrical fence, but they never test it in the same place. They just keep testing it and testing it and testing it. And that's how I see this federal government, right? Like they'll test, like, what freedoms are they willing to give up? Where are they willing to flex? They'll test and they'll test and they'll test. If they get shocked, they back up. And that's what Abbott did to Biden. He gave him a big ass shock in the face and said, no, dude, we're not going to give in. And we saw it happen. So I think that gives us hope. It gives me hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's so many people out there that are saying that it looks hopeless. Like, can we win? All this kind of stuff. I think that America is worth fighting for to the death. And I've got an example from my life when I, like, going back to my divorce, when my ex-wife first separated from me, I went full force into trying to save it. I didn't necessarily make all the right moves, but my intent was to try to save the marriage. And I knew that I couldn't, right? Like there's always this thought in me that like, I don't know if I can save this, but I'm going to fight like hell to try to save this. And so for about 9 months, I was in this like terrible situation where I had to keep fighting, even though it was hopeless. And I went through so much therapy. I did a ton of reading, and I was introspective, and I went to church, and I even went to this immersive therapy thing in Georgia. So I flew all the way across the country to try to get help and to try to change who I am. And you know, a lot of it did work really, really well. But I kept fighting until the bitter end. Even when we met to get the paper signed, I was still, you know, I was groveling, I was begging. I was like, don't do this. And to be honest, I feel really, really good about that year, even though that year sucked. It was the worst year of all time. But I felt really, really good because I kept fighting to the bitter end. And I know that America is still worth fighting for, and we have to keep fighting, even if there's no hope. Because let's say that it does fall and we go into this socialistic, like Marxist state, you're going to be sitting there thinking, okay, maybe I could have done more. Maybe I could have done more. Here's another thing I'll say. When we get to heaven, right? One of the things that you're probably going to do is go search out your favorite Bible characters, right? And what are you going to say to Daniel? What are you going to say to Paul? What are you going to say to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Like, they died for their faith, right? Like, Daniel was thrown in the lion's den. He spoke truth to power. He literally opened up his windows to go pray when that was not allowed. He made his own diet just to not eat the sacrificed meat of the time. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in the freaking fire. They got thrown in there, right? Peter, he was crucified upside down. There were so many people that gave their life for God and for the faith. And can you imagine going up there and talking to those guys like, oh, like, what'd you do on earth? Nothing. I moved to Texas.
Yeah. I complained on social media.
Like, what did you do?
Right.
Like what, like, so that thought keeps me going, right? I'm like, okay, I don't want to be Jonah. I don't want to run away. I don't want to be like Samson, who is just like fallen dude, but God still used him, right? Like I want to be the guy that people, I want to be the guy that does something, right? There's so many people that just like criticize, or they even talk like we're talking, but they're not doers, right? So like, America's worth fighting for, and I just don't think that you want to have any regrets at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I can't think of a better way to wrap this thing up than with what you just said there, man. We got to do this again. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I feel like we were just getting started. I could probably talk to you for 5 hours about all sorts of things, man. But I appreciate your time. You've been very generous with it today. And where can everybody go to find you? Because you guys need to follow this dude, especially if you enjoy my content and this show. You will love Gentry's content. He's one of my favorite follows. So go check him out.
So you can follow me at Gentry Jeevers on Instagram and Gentry W Jeevers on Twitter. I had to make a new account. We're also, I'm also building up a media company right now called Breakaway_USA. So go follow us on Instagram and X. We're also on YouTube as well. So we also do long form content. We gotta figure out how to get you on our show too, so that we can cross pollinate. But follow, like, share, save. Definitely comment on Dave's stuff and my stuff. Every little piece of interaction helps so much with all the sensors, with everything that we're fighting against. So, yeah.
Right on, man. Yeah. So I was about to wrap up, but you mentioned Breakaway, and I've seen that a little bit. What is it, a podcast, or what are you trying to do with that? Just real quick, because I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so Breakaway USA is a cooperative media company. So we have 5 shows that is getting published right now. So we have, our cast of personalities is fantastic. So we're helping produce shows. We're getting people plugged in. We're getting brand deals and ad sponsorships and all that kind of stuff. And really the thought process behind it is there's so many creators out there that want to start shows, but don't know how to do it all by themselves. And they've got amazing content, right? Like they're already established creators. And so with Breakaway, what we're trying to do is we're kind of trying to have like the new cool kids club on the block. So we're not necessarily trying to compete with like Daily Wire or Turning Point or PragerU or any of this stuff. We're trying to like get other people to have a voice, because there's so many people that are good at what I do and good at the short form stuff, but the long form stuff is just it's unbelievable. So we're trying to basically build out a platform where we can say, hey, you've got talent. Do you want to have a show? And right now we're building it up. We actually just hit 6,000 followers on Instagram, which we're stoked about. We got a video that's got 1 million views in the last day. So we're kind of crushing it in a lot of ways. But in the future, one of the goals is to say, hey, like we have this massive network of people, and we can put you on to like actually have a really successful show right out of the gate.
That's amazing. That's and very needed, man. I love that, because the Daily Wire's great. All these sort of parallel economy, right-leaning media companies, so to speak, are great, but they only work with the most massive creators. And I've always thought it would be awesome because I know so many people who are small, but what they say is so important, and they're good at what they do, but they've just like even this show. I mean, I've been doing it for 3 years, and I like it does really well across all the audio platforms, but YouTube constantly, dude, I get episodes removed all the time. They limit my views, all that, and it's just really tough to sort of get going, especially in the more sort of mainstream media outlets like YouTube, for example, which I need to switch to Rumble, and I have no good reason why I haven't done that, but I need to do it. But I think that a good business solves a problem, and I think you guys will definitely be solving a problem. And dude, that's awesome. So everybody listening, check out Breakaway, and I'll shout you guys out in my story and stuff. We'll get hopefully 6 or 7 people to check you out. But that's cool, man. How many people are involved with that? You have partners?
Yeah, so we have 3 co-founders, and then we have 8 people on the team. So we have a myriad of people doing shows, like podcast shows. We have one guy who is a documentary
cool
guy. So we're actually going to have, I think, 3 documentaries come out in the next couple months, which we're really excited about. So I think the documentary route is going to be a really, really good one to go down, because those things are really powerful. I mean, I got really into all this because of a documentary called Out of Shadows, right? So
I'm not familiar, but I'll check it out.
So it's basically about the like sex trafficking in Hollywood.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of it you'll probably know, but it's a really great introduction for people to kind of understand what's going on in Hollywood.
Right on. Right on, man. Yeah. Well, if I can help with that effort in any way, whether it's, getting guests for some of your people or whatever, just let me know. I'll do anything I can, man.
Well, I mean, step 1 would be getting more people from Breakaway on your show.
Well, I'd be happy to. We'll get them some exposure. I'm always looking for guests. So we'll talk about that more offline, but check out Gentry, everybody. Dude, I really appreciate your time. I enjoyed this conversation. I love everything you're doing, especially the Breakaway thing. I hate that we didn't get that to the end, but I'm glad we brought it up. And I think that's very needed, and that makes me happy. So check him out, guys. Gentry, I appreciate it, brother. Everybody listening, until next time, keep your minds free. Boom. We did it. All right. Let me